Good evening. The room for Monday, June 13th, 2022 is now called to order. If all would please arise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I will give that. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kim, can you take a roll call for us?
Yes, ma'am. President Gallagher.
Present.
Vice President Gordon.
Present.
Secretary Scott.
Present.
Board Member Tripp.
Present.
And Board Member Klein.
Present.
You have a quorum, 5-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'd like to welcome everyone out to our meeting tonight. I know we have a lot of visitors here tonight for public comment, and we have some students here and some coaches, and so we're excited to have you all here tonight. Thank you for joining us. So we'll go ahead and get started tonight with some introductory comments by our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Visu Cleveland.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here this evening. I have just a few remarks before we get started with the business portion of our agenda. We have some commendations this evening, and that's always a wonderful part of our board meetings. Bruce Carver, our Executive Director for Athletics, will present 2 athletic commendations this evening. One is the Rio Rancho High School Girls Doubles State Championship tennis team, and the second is the Cleveland High School Boys Track Team, who also are state championship winners. So congratulations to both, and we're delighted that you're here this evening. We'll be talking about the Spark Academy. Jana Chenault will present a proposal to the board to discontinue Spark, the elementary virtual program, which has been housed at Joe Harris Elementary School. I want to absolutely say that this has been a very effective program, and the staff and students have done a great job during the pandemic, and our parents have been wonderful and supportive. So there's nothing in terms of this not having been a good program. We also have some parents who definitely want the program to be continued, and I think some of them may be here this evening. The biggest challenge that we're facing right now is insufficient enrollment to be able to justify the cost for program continuation. And the other is more of a long-term issue. There is really no long-term location for this program. When you have insufficient numbers, it impacts the ability to offer a comprehensive instructional program. It's all of the services that are really important in our elementary school programs. And so that's been a critical factor in looking at this. The last is that we're expecting enrollment to increase at Joe Harris in the very near future. And if you've been out there, you'll see that there's construction all around the Joe Harris site. You will be asked to consider the food service contract for SFE. The presentation will be made by David Vigil, who is our Executive Director of Finance, Michael Madrid, who is our Purchasing Director, and Dean Gallegos, Food Services Director. The recommendation is to extend the contract for the next school year. There were many challenges in the program this past year, and those challenges were definitely exacerbated by the pandemic. SFE has indicated that those issues will be promptly addressed next school year. They have been short on personnel, which is not unique to anyone right now, and they have had some key, but they have made some key staffing changes for the fall that we think will be very positive. You will have 4 ITB or RFP awards to look at this evening and consider. The 4 awards that are being recommended this evening are by Michael Madrid, our Purchasing Director, and Melanie Archibek, our Executive Director for Facilities. And you can see the 4 that are up this evening for consideration. Bituminous Paving, a general contractor on demand, architectural design services on demand, and a painting contractor on demand. You will also be asked to consider a renewal request. This is a recommendation by Beth Pendergrass, Chief Communications Strategy and Engagement Officer, and Michael Madrid, Purchasing Director, to extend the contract for the Rosano Government Relations contract for the next school year. This will be the third amendment or the third year. So these services will need to be rebid next year in order to comply with our state requirements and regulations. We appreciate Mr. Balzano's continued work on behalf of the district, representing our interests before the New Mexico legislature during 2 very difficult years. We will also give the board an opportunity to discuss large district representative for the New Mexico School Boards Association. Rio Rancho is the 3rd largest school district in the state of New Mexico, and therefore our district has an opportunity to have one of our school board members serve on the New Mexico School Board Association's Board of Directors. And so Amanda Galbraith, the president of the Rio Rancho Public School Board of Education, will present that item this evening. We had this last week, a couple of wonderful celebrations. Last week, we honored our retirees, and I again want to thank them for their many, many years of service. There were a lot of different numbers, but some went back to the beginning of the school district in 1994. And so we thank them for many years of service and wish them well as they retire and seek other avenues in their life. We also had 4 new members inducted to the Hall of Honor. And if you've been out in the foyer, you will see some of the Hall of Honor people that are posted there now with plaques. And so we recognized them last week. There will also be a brief recognition during a future board meeting after the plaques are mounted in the foyer of the building. And we do that for 2 reasons. One, we had a limited number of people who could come with them. And some of them would like to bring larger numbers of their family to come and see the plaque and to receive their smaller plaques. So it would give us an opportunity to kind of do round 2 with that. It's always a nice evening as well. So the Hall of Honor inductees were really for the past 2 years during the pandemic. And they were Dr. Ronaldo Garcia, who was a former school board member at the beginning of the district and then stepped in again in an emergency situation. Also was the director of instruction for UNM Valencia campus and the director of instruction when we had UNM West, and worked for many years to help us expand dual enrollment opportunities for our students. Tony Otero, currently a community volunteer, as I said, community volunteer extraordinaire. He has worked with our schools for many, many years. He is the owner of the Dairy Queen in Rio Rancho. If you ever go into the Dairy Queen, you will see his walls plastered with all of the awards and recognitions he has received for his many years of support. He has just been a dedicated supporter of our district, but particularly Rio Rancho High School. And then John Smith, substitute teacher and student advocate. He accepted his award. He was 99 years old. He substituted until about 3 years ago. Students absolutely loved him, and he has worked he had worked at one point, he shared with Winston Churchill. He had worked with Kissinger. He had been in military intelligence. He had traveled all over the world. He was there to help broker the opening of McDonald's in Russia, which is now gone by the wayside. But he had wonderful experiences to share with our students. And several years ago, he was the one teacher that our Rio Rancho High School valedictorian said it made the biggest impact on his life. And so a phenomenal man. We just got so lucky to have him in our community. And last but certainly not least is Teresa Seiss, who is our transportation director at the beginning of the district. For many years was our lobbyist. And I guess if you were to just say one thing about Teresa, she was the cheerleader for the Rio Rancho Public School District anytime she had an opportunity to do that. So those 4 individuals will be coming into the Hall of Honor, and we will have a special event here as well as the one that we had last week. And I stand for any questions, comments, or concerns.
The board, any questions? No? Any questions on this? Okay. I do have to just add to that Hall of Honor. It was so wonderful to be there. It was really, really neat. Each of those people in our community have just been wonderful. So I was grateful to be there. So thank you, Dr. Cleveland, for those comments and the introduction to our meeting for tonight. Okay, we'll go on to item E, to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Any questions or changes that need to take place there?
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan. I make a motion to approve, prioritize agenda, and propose time allocations.
Board Member Tyler will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jeff Morgan and a second by Jessica Tyler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, we'll now move into our public comment portion of our meeting. I'm going to quickly go through the written comment, and then I'll talk about the in-person public comment that we have here tonight. So first, on our public comment form, we received 11 public comment. All of those public comments, instead of going through each, and I'm going to read each of the names, but they were all in regards to keeping the Spark Academy as it has been functioning. Those public comments came from Ashley Daniels, Misty Hunter, Ginger Mosley, Mariah Castillo, Michelle Grudele, Amanda Leah Sanchez, Alicia Lopez, Erica Inman, Jonathan Daniels, Judy Barreras, Steve Inman. And some of their reasons were, that that Spark Academy helps with the medical needs of some of our students, also with their mental needs. It's innovative for our district, and it's only been open for a short time, and it needs time to grow. So those are our public comment that were written in. Now we do have two individuals who have asked to give public comment in person. So I'm going to go over a couple of things, and then we'll call out those individuals. As I go to do these, just to announce, our first one will be Ashley Daniels, and then our second will be Erica Inman. And so as we do public comment here in the board meeting, the boardroom, there's a couple of things, and hopefully you all have had this on your agenda and have had a chance to look at it. But we reserve the right to limit or curtail repetitive comments or other expressions that are obscene, profane, disruptive, the orderly conduct of our meeting. Also, you will only be given, and I'll probably say this again in just a second, you only get 3 minutes to speak. And so I think sometimes 3 minutes seems like a long time, but it goes by really, really fast. So you only have 3 minutes to speak. So that's an important. So we'll start a timer, and that timer, when it runs out, the time is done for you to speak. You'll each be given 3 minutes, and we cannot take any action on the things that you talk about today. Though, of course, both of these are based off of some things that we will be taking on action tonight. So that will happen later on in the meeting, but we will not be able to talk back and forth with you about the comments that you're making at this time. And so with that, we'd like for Ashley Daniels to please come up to the podium. Kim, can you start the timer when she starts at 3 minutes? Thank you. Let's make sure that's on before you start and before we start our time. This is that time you realize your batteries are low. No, hopefully they're good. I think we're good. There we go. I hear it. Okay.
Okay, well, I am Ashley Daniels, and I'm a Spark Academy parent. I'm here to talk to you about the status of Spark Academy. So in the summer of 2021, my children were accepted into the family school. Excellent school, Spark RRPS, but we're here in Rio Rancho. We wanted to stay with Rio Rancho, so we were overjoyed to hear about Spark Academy. So we went ahead and committed to Spark Academy, committed to RRPS, and tonight we hope you guys can commit. So Spark Academy, engaging academics with little to no distractions. It's a place where students who find the traditional classroom distracting or overstimulating have a chance to be successful. It can be tailored to the student's individual needs very, very easily. The connection and opportunity for involvement as a can be in the traditional class. These are just a few of the reasons why we're so surprised to hear that the closure for Spark Academy is even on the table. Spark represents 21st century learning. RRPS prides itself on being innovative. This is the way to continue in that tradition. Our community at Spark wants to be flexible. We want to work with stakeholders to keep our school open through whatever creative means we can figure out together. The future of Spark's really exciting. We hope that you guys vote to let it grow. Let's see where this goes. I really feel like it's going to be a school that our community, yes, will be proud of. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Our next public comment is Erica Inman. And I'm not sure if I'm saying your last name. So, it's good. Thank you.
Okay, got it. I did submit a written comment, but I just wanted to share my support in person. Spark Academy has been an incredible experience for my family. We didn't really know what to expect going into it. We did choose Spark due to COVID-19 concerns. We honestly thought we'd be there for 1 year and go back to traditional school for our children. Spark, I've seen my daughter especially thrive in this environment. Whether it's because she's so shy, she really came out of her shell. And I do think that it is due to her teacher at Spark. She was the student council president. She was entering all kinds of contests. She won a science fair, a virtual science fair. She was involved in many different clubs and activities, and this is the first time she's ever taken any initiative to do that. And I do think that the virtual environment helped push her in that direction. The teachers and the principal were fantastic. This was like a community feel. Teachers, principal, parents were so involved, and we love it. And, you know, I think closing after just 1 year is premature. I think if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's the need for a virtual environment. We really don't know for sure what's going to happen. We don't know how COVID's going to look in the fall or the winter. My husband and I do have pre-existing conditions, as do many of the probably parents, teachers, and students that attend Spark. And this helps us feel like we minimize our risk. You know, I just feel like closing at this point is such a disappointment, and it puts us in just a very difficult situation of finding the appropriate school for our children. And I really understand the challenges of the financial needs for Spark, but I think this is an investment worth taking. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and that is our public comment for tonight. I just want you to know that we really appreciate you all coming in and giving public comment. Since we've come back from the pandemic, we haven't had a lot of public comment come into our boardroom, and so we appreciate our parents and those in the community who are willing to come out to our meeting and to give public comment, both in writing and especially here in person. So thank you so much for that. All right, we'll now move into our commendations. We'll start with, actually, we'll just welcome Bruce Carver up because he's doing both of our commendations tonight. So our first commendation is going to be for our Rancho High School girls doubles state champion tennis team. There we go.
Good evening, President Gilbert, board members, and Dr. Cleveland. It's a real honor to be up here this evening and recognize a couple of our programs that have done some really extraordinary, amazing things this spring. And I'll start with Rio Rancho High School. You know, we've competed in the sport of tennis for about 25 years over at Rio Rancho High School. We've never won a boys or girls state championship. In fact, we've never won a state championship at either high school in the sport of tennis. We've competed and had some good teams down through the years, but we've never won it all. That changed this spring. The girls team from Rio Rancho High School won their first ever girls doubles state championship. Of course, they also won the district team championship this year. The two girls that are here tonight had a lot to do with that district championship also. Kate Siegel, Samantha Baltz did an outstanding job. I want to say a few words about our head coach, Uwe Balzas. Uwe's been our soccer coach, German teacher at Rio Rancho High School for 25 years. He took over our girls tennis program 5 years ago, and he's really built it up. He's done a tremendous job. Uwe's one of 4 coaches who started at Rio Rancho High School when it opened that are still coaching today. And, you know, he wears a lot of hats. Has a tremendous work ethic. does a great job. We're very fortunate to have Uva leading our girls tennis program, and he's going to come up now and make a few comments and introduce these young ladies. Uva Balsas.
I think I stay right here, so face everybody.
Yeah, unfortunately. You can just grab that. There you go. Perfect.
Oh, awesome. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I know familiar faces, Dr. Cleveland, some of you guys, and especially Gary, who before I came to Rancho High School recruited me to Moriarty High School. And I still, up to this point, I don't know if he was still mad at me after a year where I felt like living was too, and that I applied here. And are you okay with that? You got over it. And then, story, he's gonna, after so many years, it's kind of funny. I'm proud to introduce my two athletes here, Sam Watts. Stand up, please.
Come on up. I'm shaking my hand for her to come up.
Okay. Now I can sing. So this is Sam Baltz. Sam Baltz, she is an 11th grader. She joined us in 8th grade. She's she's 12th grader now. She has one more year to go. And then we have Kate Siegel. Kate, come up here, please. Kate joined us as an 8th grader. And she, wow, we're going through micro. Is that me? And Kate, she joined us as an 8th grader. She won district championship in singles every year since she joined us. And this year, those two decided to compete in doubles. And they did an awesome job. They came to me actually and initiated this and said, hey, we can win it. Why don't we give it a shot? And I was like, okay, why not? Let's do that. And those girls went out there and they competed. They won the district championship. And then they went into the playoffs, beat everybody, didn't even give up a set. They beat the favorite Farmington in the semis in 2 sets. And then we beat La Cueva in 2 sets as well. And we always know that this all has 2 sides. There's an athletic side to it, which they completely made me happy and their parents and made the district proud. But also there's an academic side, and those two are out. And they're holding up their grades. They have a high G. Actually, Kate is going on a scholarship as you, correct? And with them, we don't do yet, but going to some high quality college as well. So if you guys would give them a big hand for this. And then I have words to say, first of all, thank you to the board for supporting us and providing us with the necessary funds to run a good program. We never had a problem with getting enough funds to buy equipment. And as you know, it's not cheap to run tennis. You have to go out, buy balls and all this every year. There's a lot of money involved, but we are very happy to say that we have you and we have your back. Also, I would like to say thank you to Bruce, who is a big supporter of our program, and also Coach Metzger, our retired athletic director. Those two are awesome. They helped us whenever they were able to. And those two, they came even down there when we had the state playoffs and supported us. And they took their valuable time out and came to us and cheered us on. So thank you for that. And yeah, finally back to my 2 athletes with one teary eye. I have to let go. Sam will be here for another year, and I hope we have another successful season. So again, thank you for inviting me, and that's all I have.
I have just say really quick that Uva taught my husband probably at least 25 years ago at Siegel High School for a short time.
And I
So-
just have to say, I don't know how old it makes me feel or how old it makes Uva feel, but he was also one of my soccer coaches when I was just a very young child. And you can imagine what our after game talks were like after his presentation just now. But thank you, Uva, for all the support you've given the girls, and Sam and Kate, congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Anyone else from the board want to say anything real quick?
Congratulations. It's very impressive. Thank you, ladies, for winning and bringing back the trophy for us.
Just want to say thanks. Appreciate the hard work.
I'd like to say to the young ladies, once a ram, always a ram.
It's true.
And I'll tell you what, first time ever, you'll never forget that. Nobody else will forget that. Great job. Congratulations. And Uva, you know I love you. I thank you for everything you do for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Cleveland, you want to add?
I would also say thank you. Congratulations to both of our young women. What an outstanding job you've done. And we appreciate your coach. He has stayed with us for a really long time, very dedicated, hardworking, and we appreciate all of your many hours of service to athletes in more than one field. And so again, thank you. But again, to the girls, what a wonderful job.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we want to recognize, is that coming out?
I think so. Yeah.
Good enough. We want to recognize the Cleveland boys track team.
Yeah.
They had a tremendous year. They won every track meet that they participated in. And then they won the state track meet with 102 points going away. The thing that's truly extraordinary about this is that this is their 6th state championship in a row. And it is also the 9th state championship they've won in 10 years. Head coach Kenny Henry and his outstanding staff and the male athletes that make up the boys track team have built a powerhouse at Cleveland High School the last 10 years. As I've watched this develop over the last decade, I've asked myself several times, how? How's this happening? Does Cleveland just have better track athletes than everybody else in the state? They do have good athletes. You don't win state track meets without good athletes, no question. But that's just one factor. There are several factors in play, And do not discount the head coach factor. Kenny's going to talk about some of these factors when he comes up, but the one factor Kenny Henry will not talk about is himself. He's a very humble individual. And so I'm going to talk about Coach Henry. He has a tremendous passion for track, tremendous knowledge for the sport of track and field. He has an intense desire to compete, and he lives for the competition. If you've watched him during a meet, just tremendous competitor. But last, Coach Kenny Henry has a unique ability to relate to each individual and get them the maximum effort out of each boy. He's a mentor. He's a very good teacher. He's an excellent role model, and he cares about his athletes. He's one of the best coaches I've ever watched and one of the best I've ever been around. Without further ado, Coach Kenny Henry.
I guess I'll take this off too, if that's all right.
That's okay.
Well, thank you again for having us here tonight, recognizing our team. Thank you, Mr. Carver. A little bit embarrassing. You don't need to talk about me. You did bring up a good point about how our team have been able to be successful for many years in a row now. And it starts right here. I get emotional talking about our team for many reasons. And one is because of the amount of work that they put in. But we know for sure within our program and at our school, these athletes can do what they do if they're not given the opportunity. And you all give us that opportunity. Like Coach Bradley talked about, you give us everything we need to put together a good program. And I know for me at Cleveland, we have a lot of support from our principal. We have a lot of support from our other coaches. You know, I always talk about our football coaches who I have a very good relationship with, and you know, our basketball coach. We push athletes to different sports. Like Mr. Carver said, you can't win without quality athletes, and even at a school as big as Cleveland High School, you got to share them, you know. And so we're really fortunate that we have guys that play multiple things, and you know, we support them in doing all of that, and it helps all of our programs. The other part, and I'm getting emotional because I'm looking at one of my coaches. We have staff that has been together for a long time, and it's not always that case. You know, you have people whose lives take them in different paths, and they can't coach, but we're real fortunate that I have some coaches that have been with me for 19 years, as many years as I've been coaching, and honestly could not even begin to do it without them. But I want to introduce Carol Williams. Carol, come on up here, please. And I knew I was going to struggle with Carol being here tonight because Carol has coached with me at Cleveland for 12 seasons. She was here when the school started. She's been there every step of the way. She's coached in the district for 21 years. She just retired as an EA. So she was part of this Hall of Honor that you all talked about earlier. And now, like we said, these different avenues open up. She's going to go back to coaching probably her first love, which is basketball at Rancho High School. So that's why we're crying a little bit tonight, because, you know, some changes. But Carol has been our jumps coach. And just this year, she had an athlete, which is kind of the norm all the time, but she had an athlete who was state runner-up in the high jump. That young man was also a basketball player for our team this year. All right, she had multiple athletes in the long jump, one of which I'm going to talk about today, who was also a runner-up. But Carol Williams has coached many great athletes for Rio Rancho Public Schools, and I think we're all fortunate to have had her around. So thank you. You can stay here. And then I want to talk about a few of our athletes that are here tonight, which obviously all of our success goes directly to them. I'm going to ask Stratton. So Stratton is going to be a junior this year. Stratton this year was the individual state champion in the shot put, which anytime you are an individual state champion, it's a pretty big deal, as we just recognized with these young ladies. But he was individual state champion in the shot put. I want to also point out that this guy is a 4.0 student. He is an all-state football player already through his actually freshman and sophomore year. And so obviously a highly accomplished person, but the thing that I love about someone like Stratton is that he puts as much passion into what he does in the fall playing football as he does for us in the spring running track. Next, I'd like to ask Dominic Vasquez to come up. Dominic just graduated this year. He also all-state football player. He was individual state champion in the javelin this year. And one of the things that I think is truly remarkable about Dom is that, and I've told this story a few times, but this guy as an 8th grader, we were able to bring him up to compete at the district championships his 8th grade year as a high jumper. And we thought that was pretty unbelievable that an 8th grader could make our varsity team. Well, then his freshman and sophomore year, he was a sprinter on our team, a jumper, a JV caliber athlete, right where he should be at that age. And then last year as a junior, the guy had gotten a lot bigger than he had been previously. And now sprinting wasn't quite as easy. Jumping wasn't quite as easy. So we started hurdling because that's a little easier, right? And qualified to the state championships as a junior there. Fast forward to his senior year, again, I'm a little bit bigger now. These things are not going to be as easy for me, so let me go ahead and try to throw something and be state champion in the javelin. So pretty unbelievable. Dom will be this next year. He will be going on a mission for his church for 2 years to Puerto Rico. So another very passionate guy across the board, and he is a 3.4 student. And last, Antonio Avila, if I can have him come up. Antonio also just graduated for us. Antonio was the individual state champion in the 110 hurdles and the 300 hurdles. He actually defended that title in the 110 hurdles from the year previously. He was the high point person at the state track meet, which is basically like the MVP, if you will, of the state track meet. So highly accomplished in our sport, but surprisingly enough, it's not even his main sport. He's going to be going to play baseball at Pima Junior College next year, which is, again, another kind of remarkable story that this guy who is an accomplished athlete basically had to make a decision. Do I play baseball, which I've always done and I love and I know I'm good at, or try to run track, which, you know, I have some background in, and thank goodness for us, he made that choice. But again, just trying to say we have some guys who are really dedicated to what they do. They're dedicated to our school and our teams, and as a result, we're successful. Antonio was a 3.6 cumulative GPA to finish. So very, very proud of these guys. Proud of our coaches and our staff and our program, but thank you for letting us come tonight and talk about them. We're very grateful. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You know, my son, he runs for Rio. And I see you guys all the time, but he always gets mad at me because, you know, honestly, our schools are a community. And so I yell at him, go Skylar, go Skylar. And then Cleveland comes to him, go Cleveland, go Cleveland. And he's like, Mom, stop yelling for Cleveland. But that's good. Yeah. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
They want to beat each other pretty bad, but at the same time, they truly
Yeah.
love it too. So
Yeah.
it's definitely
Yeah. It is. Thank you. Thank you. Go to the board. Jessica, you want to say anything?
I just want to say congratulations. And, you know, my kids go to Cleveland, and you hear time and time again from whether it's a teacher in special ed or the coaches, and the coaches do have a great community. My kids grew up there, and they said, you know, Mom, I can't wait till I graduate here, you know, from the time they were 5, which is pretty remarkable. But it's because of that culture. And, you know, you hear that there's just that culture of winning in life, not just in sports, but in academics, in finding something that you love and wanting to do better. And so, Coach Henry, you're a huge part of that. So congratulations. And I think 9 out of 10 years, there's room for improvement, but I still think that equates to you've built a dynasty and it's appreciated. And congratulations to the athletes.
Thank you, Noreen Scott.
Congratulations. Really impressive.
Thank you. Gary Tripp.
You know, I want to say to Carol that there was a rumor out in the city about Marcus being your favorite. And I think that now that everybody knows Chris is your favorite and you're going back, once a Ram, always a Ram. So congratulations, Carol. But to the athletes, I want to say congratulations. It's a great honor. You beat the best of the best. And being somebody that watches the state track meet and watching the great runners that this state puts out and the great athletes that are out there, and you're number one. You're the best. And you're a Cleveland Storm, and you've been the best for a decade, and doesn't get any prouder than that. Congratulations. And to Kenny, I just want to say I admire you so much. I think the apple doesn't fall too much from the tree. You know, I love your mother and father. But I just want the community to know one thing. On an average, how many kids do you have in your program at Cleveland High School every year, Coach?
Well, our team has had success because we have high numbers. Normally, we'll have 160 boys on our track team. With COVID, everybody's numbers went down, and we went to like 80, cut it in half, which was definitely concerning. But then this year, we were back up to about 125, and so we're hoping again another year we'll be closer to the 160 that we kind of had beforehand. But yeah, that's one of the things that we definitely pride ourselves on, is getting a lot of guys out. It's a sport that affords everybody a chance to be good at something.
I just want to thank you for 125 to 150 kids every year with an over 3.0 GPA. It's incredible. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, just want to say congratulations and thanks for all the hard work. It always pays off. Thank you.
Doctor. Go ahead.
You know, you hear these accomplishments, and you just think how much hard work and dedication goes into it. And we talk about the importance of athletics and fine arts and extracurricular. They mean so much in a student's life, and it's more than just the team, though the team is extremely important, but it's life lessons. It's lessons that they build on and use for the rest of their life, friendships they develop and they keep for the rest of their life. And so it just makes such a difference. And so we thank you for your hard work, Coach Henry. We thank all of the runners who did so well this season. You have so much to be proud of. And just kind of aside to President Galbraith, Rio Rancho didn't do too shabbily either. And so they had a great season, but you are the state champions and you have every right to be just so proud of that. And again, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for coming in. I'm always sad to leave commendations, but it is time. So with that, we'll go on to our next agenda item, to approve the consent agenda. Any questions or discussion on that consent agenda?
So Board Member Jeff Morgan, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is
Board
Secretary Noreen Scott. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jeff Morgan and a second by Noreen Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay. All right, now going to our business portion. So our first item will be presented by Janice Chenault, our Elementary School Improvement Officer, on considering the status of the Spark Academy Virtual Elementary School for school year 2022 and 2023.
Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. Unfortunately, I don't have any accolades to give out. That's a hard act to follow for sure. But we do have a celebration in our Spark Academy that we started officially last year. But I just want to give a little summary of how we got to where we are today. So in March of 2020, we know that COVID hit us and we had to quickly switch to online learning, maintaining instruction, utilizing technology, recording videos, resources, and it was 2 weeks. That was the goal. And we never came back. So within that time, we handed out Chromebooks, hotspots, and shifted from a structure that hadn't changed in 100 years for our students. When that summer hit, we did a lot of planning and what we were going to do for students to have the opportunity to learn online, knowing that a lot of families didn't want their students to come back. So we did a survey, and we had over 2,000 students just in elementary school that didn't want to return in person due to COVID. Rachel Aker was hired as the assistant principal at that time to lead the charge. She managed over 2,000 students, 160 teachers during that year, including collaboration with each elementary school site, parents, support services, counseling, social work, ancillary staff, IEP meetings, 504, and teacher evaluations. She did a remarkable job with that population and the amount of students that she had. As 2021 approached, the PED said that we had to have, or in 2021, the PED said that we had to have an option, a virtual option for students. It was non-negotiable. As 21-22 approached, we surveyed the families who were currently attending virtually, and we heard back from about 500 students that they would like to remain virtual for the next year. And so we brought that option to the school board with the estimation that we'd have 500 students. That was the genesis of Spark Academy, and we were very excited to build that school and have a virtual option for families from the very beginning. At the time that Spark started, we ended up about 220 students, and that fluctuated throughout the year with some kids moving in and out depending on situations, but maintained about 220 students in Spark. The leadership team at Spark even wrote a 3-year plan to identify the academic program, how they would increase enrollment, build community relationships, and move toward a more in-person blended model, knowing that space was going to be a concern. In the spring, a survey again was sent out to parents to see how many would enroll for 2023, and we let them know that we needed a certain amount of families to enroll their children, or we wouldn't be able to maintain the program just because of the cost, which we'll go over here in a little bit. As of today, through K-5, we have 95 approved transfers with 3 pending for about 98 students. As Rachel and I have talked about this, she spoke with her parents who are here tonight, spoke with teachers, and really tried to get the message out about how we could recruit more students. They posted, Beth helped us post things on social media. Parents posted things, staff posted. But one of the biggest challenges we come up with in a virtual environment is testing. We have to test students in person according to our state mandate. So it's hard to pull students in from other districts if they can't get their children in person to teach. So that was one of the obstacles we came across. Transportation for some families was going to be an issue next year as we were looking at increasing in person. So we worked with Lynn Carl in transportation as for maybe super stops for next year to see if we could look at something for families to have a drop-off place and have their kids come for in-person learning. Some of the challenges that we have come across with cost is how do we provide the same type of learning environment for students who are virtually when we lack the resources due to the amount of students that we have. So we shared resources with Joe Harris when it came to the special education instructional leader, counseling, music. Students were given lessons from an art teacher at Puesta that they could watch and follow through with. And there was no PE option for students. That was on parents to do. They also had to share the instructional coach. Well, they had an instructional coach, but only half-time. The nurse, security, and it made it very difficult to provide some of those options that students would get in person. So this is really a question of budget, not quality, not structure or ability to provide virtual learning, budget for staff, the resources, the space in the future is a huge concern if the program continues. We had a facilities master's plan presented to us. There's no consideration for building anything or any funds to build anything for Spark. And with Joe Harris, as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, continuing to grow, that's a concern. The data that we've collected is consistent with in-person learning. So we didn't see a huge difference in how students performed virtually. We looked at that. We have talked and have found a place for all the teachers so that they would have a home if the school is to close, so that they know where they're going to go. The concern for them is this going to be a year-by-year consideration? Is every year going to be a consideration for the school, and is it going to be an option for me, and where am I going to go? So that's one of the concerns the teachers have. So if we want to go to the first slide, please. This shows the enrollment. At the end of 21-22, we had 207 students. As you can see, a lot of our students that receive IEP services are returning back into in-person learning. We have 1 student who receives gifted students, 3 with speech and language, and 3 students who would receive English language support, and 12 students receiving reading intervention. And I'm sure you know that when we're looking at allocations, a 1.0 allocation for 12 students, we wouldn't get that. So we might get a 0.5, and then that's difficult to find sometimes. Next slide, please. We wanted to share the budget with you. So we upgraded, or not upgraded, but we added the new salaries in here so that you could see on average what we would need to support the program. If we were going to do a quality virtual program, and this is something we really talked about, we don't want a piecemeal program. If we're going to do it, we want to do it well. These are the resources that we would need, which averages out to $14,000 a student that we would be spending. We wanted to give you just an overview of the data so that you could see. So thank you to Dr. Happy Miller. She helped us put this together, but you can see that it's close to what's happening in person. Not exactly, but it's close. And I've mentioned a lot of this, but there's a lot of strengths with this program. The concern is funding the program and being able to fund it moving forward annually with about $1.4 million budget every year. If we're able to grow the program, that budget would have to increase to support the students. Next year, we'd have to have a teacher that would do a K-1 split because we don't have enough students to have a kindergarten and a first grade, and that teacher would have about 15 students. We could have one student then, or I'm sorry, one teacher in second, one teacher in third, one in fourth, and one in fifth, but we still need all of those support services. We did share with Joe Harris last year. Mr. Hefner was absolutely willing to do that. The struggle is, again, we're asking teachers to teach in person and virtually. And that some of that grading fell on the classroom teachers because we really only had music that he could do virtually. We didn't have art, and we didn't have PE. Next slide. Is that it? So I am here to stand for questions. Ms. Aker is here if you have any questions for her. But like I said, this isn't about a quality of a program. We value very much what is done. It's really a question of whether or not this is something we can continue to fund.
Okay. So really quick, I have a question. So we just approved a budget. Are you telling me that in that budget, we did not approve money for Spark Academy? Because I'm mad at myself then for not seeing that. We did.
We did.
We have it budgeted in our current budget for Spark Academy. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and go to the board, and we'll come back to me, and we'll go back to Dr. Cleveland too. But go ahead, Noreen.
Of that 1.3, how much would be spent in the regular classroom? What's the differentiation if we were to say close Spark? What's the savings versus the expense?
Question. So we would obviously still have a position for Ms. Aker. So we would still have that position. But if you look at the other positions, most of these will go to other vacancies at schools, or we have a breakdown of how many students will return to each of their home schools. So those teachers will have to go back there to be with those students. And so it just depends on the number of students at each school. I think we had a budget for, correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, 13 students or 13 teachers. And next year we were allocated for 11, and we would be sending them back to school. So it'd be mainly the GE teachers and the principal that would still remain in the budget.
Okay.
So probably about 600,000 would still be in the budget, but that would not be reoccurring because those positions would be probably those 20, it depends on where those 26 kids fall because they won't all fall in one class. They'll be spread out throughout the school.
Okay, now my next question is, how many students will we lose from the district if Spark Academy doesn't exist?
You mean from out of district?
No, I mean, how many students that currently we're receiving money for will leave? How many will leave the public school system?
I don't know. I know there's one that enrolled in another academy, but that's the only one I'm familiar with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jessica Tyler.
So the way it's been proposed is that, the main reason this is being brought to the board for action is because of the reduction in enrollment. So what would a target enrollment number look like for it to be worthwhile budgetarily for it to remain open?
I can tell you that cyber, I don't know cyber's budget, but they start with 150 and they usually grow to over 200 throughout the year. So we were trying to get at least 200 students enrolled so that we could justify the expenses. We wanted to have at least, ideally, if we could have gotten enough students for each grade level, we were hoping for more than that. But even 17, when you look at class sizes, kindergarten is usually one teacher allocation is 20 students. First grade is 22, and second is 22, and then you're at 24 students. But even then, I don't know, the return on the investment. It's more the overhead cost of everything than it is per pupil expenditure, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But we were hoping for over 200.
Okay, and then one final question, maybe it's kind of two parts. When parents were surveyed last year about interest in the Spark Academy, were they given a time frame as to how long it would be? Was it just for this past school year?
No, there was no time frame.
No time frame given. Okay.
Okay. Gary Tripp.
Jenna, how many students does Joe Harris have this year, and how many are you guys projecting for next year?
I think they ended at 443. Right now, he's about 463.
Okay. Yeah, I mentioned that it's about 14,000 per pupil at the elementary level.
For Spark, yes.
For Spark, what's the per pupil average elementary at the other schools?
We just looked the numbers up the other day. I think when you count in overhead, if you just do per pupil, that's really hard to say. It was around 5,000. If we looked at what the state gave for this current budget year, And they were considering all resources, not just the per pupil expenditure. It was like $11,000. But that included the entire district.
And you're at 98 right now.
Yes, sir.
And the target was possibly a goal was 200.
Yes, sir.
What would be a number that would balance the budget that you had set for Spark? What would be a budget? What would be a number that would make it balance, make the budget balance, you think? I mean, I know that's probably an estimation on
What
my.
makes it difficult is general ed teachers are one thing. It's looking at all the support services. So they didn't have their own counselor. They didn't have, we had to share social work. And the ancillary services are shared across the district, but it's more of being able to offer a counselor, an interventionist. The staff there wouldn't have an instructional coach like the other schools do. So there's just those offerings that happen in a large campus that they don't have. I know cyber has a lot of that, but they don't have all of it either.
When Spark was being developed, was it seen as an elementary type of program for that sector of the population respectfully would maybe move towards cyber?
We were excited. We thought this would be something that would really take off and parents would be interested in it. So we were surprised that so many returned to in-person learning when we had the numbers out. We thought it would be something we could grow. That's why we started talking about like Bernalillo and Albuquerque and just closer areas. Rachel worked a lot with homeschool communities to try to recruit homeschool communities, but they wanted to really control what their program looked like. But I know she was moving to more of a sort of a homeschool model where you could pull in community resources and, start one day next year, coming in every week, one day, because currently it was once a month, and then moving to 2 and then into 3. So they would have more opportunities to be in person, more like cyber. And I think that's one of the benefits of cyber is the students get to come in and they get to have the eyes on the kids. And that's something that we wanted to move towards. But it's very difficult to think about that in 3 years and not know if we're going to have a space to do that.
One more question I forgot about, and that is, what is Joe Harris built to hold?
I believe it's 800.
800. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeff Morgan.
Thank you, Gary. That was one of the questions I'd ask about that dollar amount compared to the other schools versus Spark, but that's all I had. Thank you.
And if I might add, if you look at a school like Stapleton that is 860 kids, they have one music teacher, one PE teacher. So those teachers are teaching 860 kids. So when you look at 98 kids in one teacher allocation, it doesn't weigh out. And so we were having a really hard time trying to figure out how do we get them that same support and that same quality of education, because we don't want to lose that. That was a hard struggle.
How much do you think, can this number change, this 98? I just barely registered my students finally, last week for school. So, through the summer, what do you see as far as changes? Could there be more that possibly come and register for Spark? What do you see across with other schools? How does their enrollment change through the summer with people getting their registrations in?
I think it depends on the school. I know there was a huge push at Cyber to promote it. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to talk to that at all and everything that she's done, and maybe she can help you maybe answer that better than me.
Members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. I could tell you what I have done to try to get a really solid number for you guys. We have reached out, called individually all our families, so we know 100% which of our current families are coming back. We've actually increased through some of that outreach. So teachers and parents posting on social media, reposting all of the things that Ms. Pendergrass had posted in her office, just to try to recruit and get more students. We put flyers up in local businesses in Rio Rancho. So at this point, we know which students are coming back, and we would need to be recruiting more students. So I've been trying to reach out to some of the homeschool communities. Through those efforts, in the last couple months, we've added about more than 20 students. And considering how many students we have, that's pretty good percentage. But in between now and August, it would be to get more students, we would need more recruiting efforts for them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions from the board? And then I'll go to Dr. Cleveland. Go ahead, Gary.
Transportation question. When do parents transport students themselves? Okay.
They do. Rachel was looking at doing super stops with Lynn for next year. But again, with the shortage of drivers, I don't know if that's gonna actually be able to happen, if it'll happen. However, there were parents that were saying without those super stops, they can't be bringing their kids once a week into the campus.
Okay, Jessica Tyler.
Well, I think it's a difficult thing to look at, but I think that, when you look at our recent accreditation report, two of the things that they really highlighted was being an innovative school district and working towards that more, and also utilizing program evaluation more. And I think I see this as an opportunity for both of those things. I think that we've made the commitment to start this program, not giving our parents a specific time frame of when this program would be available or not available. I feel like it's a little bit late in the game as a parent to say, your students are enrolled and now we're going to close it. So I think that, if we, depending on what the board decides, if we leave it open, I think that, like I said, it's a good opportunity for us to do further program evaluation and look at the longevity of it. I think 1 year, it's hard to make a finite decision on what could be in another year or two. I think it's something that, yes, obviously came out of the need because of the pandemic, but that there is a demographic of people, and while that's small, that really do utilize this format. And, it is finding that the demographic of, okay, no, we don't want to do homeschool, but we do want the virtual environment. And so it's going to be a smaller population that we're going to serve, but we already did approve a budget that supports the Spark Academy for next year. So those are just my thoughts about, thinking about the accreditation report and some of the direction that we were given about areas that we could improve on. And I think this is an opportunity for improvement, using that as a place where we can do better program evaluation and continue innovation.
Thank you. So real quick, I want to go to everyone to get their thoughts. Let me go to Dr. Cleveland real quick, and then we'll kind of go back through the board for thoughts. Dr. Cleveland, I see she's jotting down her last minute notes there.
No, I would just add a couple of things. I would caution us to be very careful about the 14,000, the 11,000, because they don't include exactly the same things. And maybe Mr. Veal, I don't know if he would want to add anything to that. But the 11,000 approximately per pupil includes some things like transportation, other things, all total costs. And this 14,000 doesn't include all of those things, though certainly transportation costs are much less for Spark than they are for some of the other programs, since you don't transport. But you still have to have a spot. You still have to have a place on that bus for the students who need that. The other thing I would share, it doesn't so much apply to this year, but next, we are having an ongoing conversation, and you've been party to some of those conversations with Mike Baker and Mr. Vigil about having balanced the budget this year on vacancy savings, and the need to, we really need to look at what our enrollment's going to be next year. We're hoping it's up some next year. We're having to look at what our vacancy rate will be next year. And we are thrilled that we're making progress in that area. I mean, our number one goal is a teacher in every classroom next year, and we're getting closer to that. But that'll mean less vacancy savings. We're really glad, that we're going to fill those classrooms. But there are some unknowns. And so I think, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think what might be said tonight is that that you would need to go in it with the understanding that if you go with this, there are other things that are going to have to be cut. And so that it's not like there's additional money out there to make that shift, and especially a year from now. So we are in the process right now of looking at where we can tighten up across the district. Some pretty hard conversations about that. And the basic underlying reason for that is that the money that came this year for the raises wasn't enough to give everybody in the district a raise. And the decision was made, I think, very wisely, that we believed everybody was on the team, everybody contributed. It's really hard to say to folks, yeah, you're a real member of the team, we really value you, but this year you're not getting a raise and everybody else is. So that commitment to try to compensate all staff, particularly those that were custodians or those that maybe were in different kinds of positions, maybe our educational assistants, all of that was taken into account. Bottom line is money's very tight. And that's one of the things the board really has to balance is yes, maybe to this, but then it'll be no to something else. And that's where we are right now. That's a really hard situation. I really want to echo what I said earlier. I don't have one bad thing to say about this program. It's a wonderful program. We wish the state had come across with additional funding. And if the board decides to go that direction, then we will go back and look at what we might reduce somewhere else. So it's certainly up to the board. But we, it's just one of those situations where we did not get as much money as we'd hoped from the state. And we're now having to look at being very, very tight across the district for our programs. So, but I would be very careful about those two numbers. They're both correct numbers, but the 11 and the 14 do not necessarily cover all of the same things. And I don't know, Mr. Vigil, would you want to add anything to what I just said, or do I have that correct? Or
You do, sir.
okay, all right. Well, no.
President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. I would also echo what Dr. Cleveland said in terms of it's an economies of scale issue. So when you see the numbers of the membership in each grade, if you have one teacher that's teaching 7 kids, that's part of the reason why that cost per pupil is so high. So in addition to the idea that the 14,000 and the 11,000 doesn't cover all of the same things, you also have to consider that if you have a certain number of staff, which are part of your variable costs, right, along with your fixed costs, the membership that it takes to support that is lower in a smaller school, right? And so it really comes down to an economies of scale issue. So that's the other thing that I would have to add.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask, when did you know that the enrollment numbers were going to be so much less than they were the current year? Because to me, as a board member, we were given the budget with this built into the budget. We approved that budget, but now we're being told, no, we don't have, it's not the best use of our money for the district as far as serving the same amount of students, which I understand that. But from our perspective, and probably the public's perspective, it feels a little bit like, why are we just getting this information now? So when did we know the enrollment was lower?
We sent out a survey March. We asked and brought it to cabinet and talked about it and talked about, do we have a certain amount that we want to shoot for? And then that's when we tried to really push to bring in more families. So we've been working on trying to bring in more families and really wanted to give time to build the program, or the school. It's not a program, build the school. And so for the last few months, that's all we've been working on, is really trying to do duplicitous things. Like we're trying to keep the school going and recruit, and then what's plan B if we can't? So we gave parents until June to make a decision, and we wanted to see what our final numbers were at that time. We were hoping that we would have enough enrollment that we could continue moving forward if we gave enough time and recruited hard enough.
There's one other thing I think is really important I'd like to add, if I could. There was a mention about, as the summer went on, if numbers would grow and, could we make an adjustment? Here's one of the challenges. When we started the program, we asked teachers to step forward, and they left their schools. They left where they had sometimes been for years, were very attached to really help us get this program started. And we did make a commitment to those staff members at that time that we would make sure we did not leave them hanging after they had stepped forward and helped us. And so one of the problems is, if you wait too long, they have now positions in other schools. What happens to that position if they aren't assured of having that position? And so it's hard. Many of these teachers would really love to stay. They love the kids and they love the program, but they also have their own families, their own children to take care of. And so it's hard for them to not know for sure where they would have a spot. And so in many cases, we wanted to give them first choice to be able to go back to the schools they came from. But the principals can't wait until July or August to hire a replacement for them. If we want good teachers, we're already past the curve in hiring now. So that's part of the challenge too, is the staff, where they go, and being fair to them and giving them an opportunity to go back to the schools that they came from before somebody else goes back and takes that spot if Spark Academy is not approved to move forward.
Can I ask if I understand this correctly? Joe Harris is at 463 and potentially they could be at 800. So is there just one guidance counselor there now? And if you added 98 more students, there would need to be 2 counselors?
No, they would still only have one. And so the guidance counselor assisted with Joe Harris, the SEAL, the special education instructional leader, helped. The ELD coordinator helped. She actually worked on both campuses, if so to speak. And so there was no reading intervention for Joe Harris because she was doing both. And so it kind of goes back to, we told teachers we wouldn't ask them to do that anymore, but now at Joe Harris we are. And it gets complicated because then who's the supervisor of that staff member? And then you've got 2 principals asking and kind of competing for resources. And they worked very well together, but it can be hard for the teachers sometimes. If Ms. Aker tells me this and Mr. Hefner tells me this, then, where do I land? And they wonder who their supervisor is. So that was something that we worked through. But it's because Spark's its own school, we would still have to dissolve it as a school if we moved it into a program in Joe Harris. And I think the biggest concern, and I've really seen this in the Montessori program, is you really want to do well. You want to do a great job. You don't just want to do it year from year to year. And so if we're going to do this, we want to do the best job that we can do, and we want to be able to sustain it and move on. And I guess the question is, can we do that if the student population is 80? If it grows, yes, but then where does it go? Where does it physically go? And so it's the longevity of the program that we want to have that commitment to, not just year from year to year. And we worked on that and committed to Montessori to really make it the best program that we can and not be year to year wondering about it. So that's really what we would ask for Spark too. And with what Dr. Cleveland has said, and knowing that CTE is coming next year, we just need to know where Spark lands in that list of priorities and what we want that to look like. Because we don't want everybody to be in limbo again next year with enrollment numbers and see what happens.
But don't you think a year of evaluating it would give us the data that would make a better decision than to come to us right now when we've already approved the budget and we've got students enrolled? Wouldn't it be better to go and give us numbers after another year of the program?
I think it would if we're talking about if we want a program that we're looking at just quality of instruction and that's all that we're looking at, absolutely. Then you would want to maintain that and see what the outcome is. It's difficult. We started all of this because of COVID. Nobody would have had a vision for a virtual school for elementary students. And there are still some of us who think that having young children at home all day and not interacting with other students, we're seeing all the SEL needs with our kiddos, may not be the best for some of our kids. And we don't always know what situation is happening, when they're not at school, or how much learning and support they're getting. Obviously, we have parents here who are there and they're supportive. But is it best for our students who haven't learned to read yet to be virtually learning that? Is that really the best? And if you look at research and you look at what's come out the last 2 years since COVID, the research will show you that virtual learning hasn't improved learning for students. It's actually created a greater gap for a lot of students. So I think we struggle with, is this really best for our youngest learners? We even talked about if we got high numbers in 3, 4, 5, could we somehow blend it with cyber and make that a 3 through or a 4 through 12 school? So we've talked about a lot of different options. So I think there's a lot of research that says our youngest students should be in school so they have that social aspect and not just the academic aspect of learning. So it depends on what outcome you want from keeping it open. And we can absolutely look at what that longitudinal data shows us, but that's only going to show us academic and enrollment numbers.
Well, I think the number of students at the beginning and at the end is going to give us some pretty decisive numbers. I mean, if the parents who spoke to us today are no larger in a group next year, then we will have data points to evaluate and say this was not a successful program. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think as we look at budget too, I would like to look at programs, if we have to cut things that have been in for longer and have been unsuccessful in their things for a longer period of time. I know that we talked a little bit about this at the board retreat, and I said, we do need to make those tough decisions. I'm having a hard time with something that we celebrated a year ago, and that things got hard this year. We lost enrollment, for us to just say, okay, that just didn't work, instead of us working longer than a couple months to really work on seeing if we can really make a difference with that program. And so I'm having a hard time trying something we're like, yes, this was so great. We're so excited. We're innovative. We're doing these things. And then for us to cut a program that I don't feel like we really gave enough time to do it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, I can see that for young kids, that it being a good for them to be in person. I just feel like maybe at this point, that's not my decision to make for those families, that they need to make some of those decisions as parents. And so I think we have to be really careful with that, making those decisions on their behalf, because I think that we might just see them leave the district and seek it other places. And I'm not saying that and I know that we want stability and we want people to know if they have a job next year, but we've only been open for a year. So it's just a really hard thing. I know Jessica Tyler has some comments. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I heard you say one thing in your last explanation about, Spark Academy isn't a program, it's its own school. But then you made a comment that, if we did make it a program under Joe Harris. So is that the plan? If the vote was, if the board decided to close Spark Academy, would it be instituted then as a program at Joe Harris? Or I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand, I guess, where that comment came from.
I was comparing it to Montessori at
Okay.
which is a program.
Okay.
And the other thing is, we're talking about 1 year Spark being open, but if we go back 2 years, we had 2,000 students that were virtual. We dropped down to 220 and now we're at 80. So we're looking at it back to kind of where we started, not just the 1 year. We're trying to look at, we lost a lot from 2000. So that's kind of where we went as well. That's a huge drop.
Yeah. It's kind of skewed though, so it's hard to see because we're skewed from COVID, like trying to figure those things out. Over here, Gary, do you have any more comments or questions on things?
I try to be listening the best I could. And for me, and I'm just speaking for myself, I go back to the social emotional well-being and the diversity of this district, and trying to put forth or try to get out of my head those poor children and the teachers that were shot a couple of weeks ago. But when you have a small environment and we have room at Joe Harris, and we know that a mental health crisis is the next biggest crisis, and we're a district that cherishes diversity, and we decided to create this outstanding situation called Spark Academy. It's hard in my head to go back, especially if when I was a parent of two daughters, it was kick them in the butt and make them go to school. Now, when you have 4 grandchildren and you see things maybe a little bit different, but you see those kids and every one of them, maybe you see a little bit more, you have a little bit more intelligence, and you see that they have certain needs. And we're a great district that cherishes diversity to these families. And I think that's one thing that gravitates when we have all this great situation. But I think we're just scratching the surface on meeting the needs of the social emotional needs of the children. And when our staff is doing a great job getting there, but I think we approved it in the budget, and just my thoughts is this is something great for our community. And I think it would grow a little bit more and balance a budget if we embraced that we're going to stick to it. Yeah.
Madam President,
Yes.
would you entertain a motion?
I would.
I'd like to make a motion to keep the Spark Academy open for school year 2022 to 2023 with direction for school enrollment to be looked at before December. And then any decision to be made on that school moving forward to be done prior to February of 2023.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Noreen Scott. Before we go into vote, Dr. Cleveland, is there anything you want to add before we go into vote?
No, as I said, we love the program, and so nobody's feeling bad about it. I just want the board to have a little bit of a dose of reality here. You know, there's among the community sometimes a little bit of a concern when you're spending far more on one group of children than you are another, and you will be doing that. The second is there will be some things that will have to go. And so whatever programs we cut, I think it's important for the board to know those parents are going to feel just as strongly about that program that we're having to cut to make it work. So, you know, there's just a set of funds and it can be moved any way you want, but we can't necessarily, we can't create more than is already there. And while we're already beginning in the fall, we're already starting now to look at how we're going to reduce program in 1 year. So, you know, we will be glad to take this and put this with all the other programs. We love the program. There's absolutely no desire not to have the program. It's we have a limited budget, and hard decisions have to be made. And this will not be the first or the last hard decision the board's going to have to make. So I just kind of want to be sure you are aware of that. Mr. Vigil, is something you'd like to add?
Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. Just one more thing for the board to consider is that when we approved the budget, when you all approved the budget in the spring, the budget for Spark Academy was based on a projected enrollment of 200. And so now you're approving, you'd be considering keeping the school open. And even if you grew the enrollment by 20, 25, 30%, it still wouldn't be making up the numbers that the budget was actually built on in the spring. So that's another thing to consider. The other thing to consider is, as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, we have other priorities in the district that have a cost associated with them that do not have a revenue source that's generating the revenue to support the program. So when we're looking at certain things like the big CTE building, things like that, those students they're coming from other schools, we don't get to count those students at the CTE building for funding. So that is funded through our regular pot of money, if you will. But it doesn't, that program, that CTE building doesn't generate any revenue. So that's the other thing that you should consider. Thank you.
And so this funding comes out of that money in effect.
Potentially.
Right.
I mean, that would be your thing to consider.
One other thing I'd like to ask, Janet, do you have any idea, Rachel, do you have any idea on the teachers that are indicating that they plan to stay if the program continues, or those that plan to go back to their home schools? Do we have any idea what that looks like? Yeah.
Members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, I'm sorry, Dr. Cleveland, did you say the staff? Or
Of the staff that you have now, how many would come back if the program's open? Or are there any that said they will not come back, that they plan to go back to a traditional school environment, or do you just not know that information at this point?
So I do know that we have enough teachers to fund for the 100 students. We would not have enough for 200 right now with our current staff. And that we've had a couple that have just in the uncertainty found other positions. And I know that there have been others looking, just knowing that they didn't have certainty over the longevity of the years.
Yeah.
And then, but as far as, there's no like coming close to retirement or anything of the people that are left.
Right. Thank you. That's good news. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion. A reminder of the motion by Jessica Tyler is to keep the school open for this year. And we have a second with that. So we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote from Kim on that, if you would.
Okay, just to reiterate, Board Member Tyler made the motion and Secretary Scott seconded. Is that correct? Just to make sure I've got that right. Okay. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Ooh, Dr. Cleveland, do you want to, is there anything else you want to say on it? I know
No,
you just
I
got-
just want those parents
Yeah.
know we will do everything we can to make it work and make it continue to be a great program.
Yeah.
And the problem is just the realities that we're facing. We wish the state would do a little better for us at times. But I do want to say thank you for coming tonight. And thank you for being so interested in your child's education that you cared enough to spend an evening to come and share your thoughts with us. And so we do appreciate it. And we will do everything we can to make this program continue to be a great program.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Okay. And, as we come forward, I know we got to move on to our next thing, but we're going to have some tough decisions that we need to make. And so we're going to have to look at that.
And none of them are going to be easier than this one.
And I think it's really important that our community, really does know that we need community support and help with these things. So we need to come together. So thank you. Okay, moving on to item B, consider approval of the Southwest Food Excellence Amendment Number 1 contract term extension. We have Michael Madrid, our purchasing director, David V. Hill, our executive director of finance, and Dean Gallegos, our food services director.
Good evening, Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. As Dr. Cleveland mentioned in her comments, we have 6 procurements for your consideration this afternoon. 2 of them are contract term extensions, and 4 of them are for an award on a solicitation. This first item that we'll be discussing is amendment number 1 to the Southwest Food Excellence SFE contract. It extends it additional year. The term of this extension takes it from July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2020. I'd like to talk a little bit about we initiated the procurement using an RFP 2021-009-FIN. We initiated that and took it to the board on April the 26th, 2021. The board approved the evaluation committee's recommendation to award the procurement to Southwest Food Excellence. The contract term per the RFP allows us for an initial 1-year term, and then we have 4 1-year extensions, taking the potential contract to up to 5 years if it's so chosen by the board. Some of the dates, the initial contract term, as we just expressed, was July 1, 2021 through June 30, 22. This was a collaborative effort with the New Mexico Public Education Department. They had to approve our procurement boilerplate before we could actually solicit the RFP. The district received authorization by PED on February the 9th, 2021 to go ahead and initiate the procurement. They also signed off on the subsequent contract, the fixed price contract on May 10th, 2021. I do want to express that this is one of 2 amendments that we're going to be bringing to the board. This one right now is strictly for the term of the contract extension. We're waiting on the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, to identify the reimbursable meal rates, unit cost for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Once we get that number identified, we'll negotiate the unit meal costs with SF. Also establish a revised meal cost for our students. So that'll be in a second amendment that'll come to the board probably within a month or so. With that, I stand for any questions.
Any questions? Jessica, Tyler, Noreen, Scott? No. Any questions on this? Gary?
So I'll try this. Madam President, make a motion to approval of amendment number 1, extending the current contract with Southwest Food Excellence and Rio Rancho Public Schools for the term of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
This is Secretary Noreen Scott. I'll second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Gary Tripp and a second by Noreen Scott. Dr. Kling, is there anything you wanted to add before I go into a vote?
The only thing is, certainly we have heard from parents in the district of some concerns. We've shared those with the vendor. I think we have to certainly recognize that the last 2 years have been very abnormal years for everyone, including them, including the issues of trying to find adequate personnel. But they have certainly indicated that they will try to remedy those and seem very, very positive about moving forward. And we certainly are as well. I want to give them another chance in a more normal year. And so we appreciate that. And we appreciate the hard work, Mr. Gallegos and others to work with them on that and to continue to monitor the contract. And Mr. Vio, your work as well. So we do recommend approval. And we really hope next year will be a more normal year for everyone, including our food service.
Thank you. All right. Will you take a roll call vote for us?
Vice President Morgan?
Yes.
Secretary Scott?
Yes.
Board Member Tripp?
Yes.
Board Member Tyler?
Yes.
President Galbraith?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah. Let's see. Our next item is to consider the approval of award for ITB number 2022-18 FAC. I'm going to say that wrong.
2 minutes.
Say it one more time.
2 minutes.
I'm hoping you're going to tell us what that is.
Paving.
I knew you were going to ask me that question.
Go ahead, Michael.
The 2 minutes basically is just paving, asphalt paving.
That's what I said.
2 minutes. I could say it for 2 minutes. I actually practice words before we start the meeting typically, but I missed that one. Okay, go ahead.
I felt I'd be smarter if I put 2 minutes out there instead of paving. Board President Galbraith, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, this ITB solicitation is unique to Rio Rancho Public Schools. We had not administered this type of price agreement in the past, but purchasing has seen a need for this along with facility staff. And we decided rather than continuing our dependency on some of the cooperatives or some of the other government entities, that we would initiate our own procurement and establish our own price agreement. So for this particular procurement, the recommendation is to issue a multiple award. The recommendation is for Altor Construction Incorporated out of Albuquerque, Franklin's Earth Moving Incorporated, also out of Albuquerque, Star Paving Company out of Albuquerque, Sunland Asphalt and Construction Incorporated out of Albuquerque, and TLC Plumbing or Utility, Plumbing and Utility, also out of Albuquerque. A little bit of background on this procurement. It covers a significant number of paving and infrastructure improvements. It provides for the removal of various materials and bases and things like that. It also is the placement of bases, sub-base materials, paving by machines, handwork in areas that the machines just aren't available or accessible to meet the needs. It also includes adjustments of utilities, placements of parking bumpers, concrete work, and associated products, paving materials, pavement markings, drainage structures, and storm inlets. The attachment to the memo identifies 175 unique bid items. So it's very comprehensive. We actually engaged a consultant to help us draft the requirements to ensure that we're in compliance with the Department of Transportation's requirements and the City of Rio Rancho's construction requirements. If you look at the pricing matrix, you will not see one vendor that was low on all the categories. We feel that it's in our best interest to issue a multiple award, taking advantage of the lowest pricing for each of those categories, Right now, we don't have a scope of work established. This is work that's going to happen in the future through the next 4 years. So we'd like to have that flexibility to ensure that we have the best pricing, but it also gives the district resources to ensure that we have contractors that can meet our construction schedule. A lot of our construction activity needs to happen during certain windows, spring break, Christmas break, summer activities, things like that. And because of the volume of work of the various contractors, it's difficult to get on their schedule. So we want to make sure that we have the resources available to us. We will compete the contractors against each other to ensure that the district is getting the best service, but we'll also take advantage of the best unit costs that we've identified on the pricing matrix. So once again, the request is to issue a multiple award to all five vendors, and I stand for any questions.
How many vendors replied to the RFP? Or
Five.
Five. And all five of them are receiving it?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Cleveland, do you want to add anything?
No,
Okay.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory now that we know what bituminous means.
I know. Thank you. Gary Tripp, you had something? Or
Just a little confused, Mike, if you can help me. So these are as needed and we can call on them whenever we need.
Correct. Depending on the scope of work, Board Member Tripp, we would probably look at the vendors that gave us the lowest price for most of that construction activity and solicit numbers from those folks.
Okay. And stay in their expertise areas as well.
Correct. It'll be really at the discretion of facilities to determine which contractors they would use. By issuing the multiple award, we're not obligating the district to any expense to any of the contractors. It's strictly our discretion to utilize them as we so choose.
Could I add one thing, and correct me if I'm not right on that? I think one of the other concerns right now is just availability and issues related to supply chain. And so sometimes people, may not be available for a job. They're already booked up for the next 6 months, 9 months. So it gives us flexibility to go to those who are available at any given point in time so that we don't have to delay our projects, that there's more than one contractor to be asked. So some of it, I think, is a reflection of just the construction world that we're working in today.
And if I can just add, Dr. Cleveland, you're 100% correct. These five contractors are pretty significant as it relates to paving. So they have not just our contract if we award it to them, but they have other entities. So we're competing with those other folks, and we want them to compete for our services or our needs as well.
This is Board Member Noreen Scott. I move approval of the award for ITB multiple vendors number 2022-018-FAC bituminous paving.
Hey, I wanted Noreen to name all five companies.
Oh, would you like me to?
I always ask for that.
Altor Construction, Franklin Earth Moving Incorporated, Star Paving Company, Sunland Asphalt and Construction Incorporated, and TLC Plumbing and Utility.
Thank you.
Those are our five vendors.
And with that being said, I second.
Now you have to say them.
Well,
No. I'm freezing up here, so we kind of need to move it along.
throw my jacket. I can do it all in favor on these ones. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Lauren? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, our next one is to consider the approval of RFP number 2022-019 FAC, General Contractor on Demand, and Michael Madrid once again will present.
Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. This is going to sound very similar to the last discussion that we just had, a different construction activity. This is the second time we solicit an RFP for general contractors on demand. It's proven to be very successful. It's helped the district ensure that we have resources that they can utilize on a timely basis, and it just minimizes the amount of time required to initiate the administration of a construction type solicitation. For this procurement, we're requesting a multiple award to all 10 contractors that submitted a response to the district. Many of these folks provided services in the last solicitation. The vendors that we're recommending are Consolidated Builders out of New Mexico LLC out of Albuquerque, ESA Construction out of Albuquerque, Facility Build out of Albuquerque, Franken Construction Company out of Albuquerque, Rio Conchos Corporation out of Albuquerque, SDV Construction Incorporated out of Albuquerque, Stoven Construction Incorporated out of Albuquerque, Tadala Architectural Solutions, and the title's a little misleading, they're a contractor, also out of Albuquerque, Wild Construction Incorporated out of Albuquerque, and Weiser Electric out of Rio Rancho. The contractors bring some unique skill sets that the district can take advantage of. Many of these folks are doing work for APS, for the labs, other entities throughout the state. So we want to make sure that we have those resources. So when Melanie and her group get together and they try scheduling projects, they have some vendors that they can compete against each other. As is typical, we take all the proposals, we review them for compliance and ensure responsiveness to the documents identified in the RFP, and all firms were identified as compliant, and recommendation is for all 10 vendors. And with that, I stand for questions.
This is Secretary Noreen Scott. I move approval for RFP number 20221019 FAC General Contractor on Demand for all 10 contractors listed in the proposal that you laid out for us.
If it will help, I have a dummy motion prepared that has all 10 in it, so you don't have to go list them all.
Thank you.
Board Member Jeff Moore.
Thank you. Any questions? So real quick then, anyone? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. So now we'll consider, I'm to make sure I look at my notes, consider the approval of award for RFP number 2022-021 FAC Architectural Design Services on Demand. Michael Madrid.
Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. On construction, this is really the first step. The first step is developing a comprehensive specification that is used to solicit a procurement for a contractor. We had 11 responses to this solicitation, and it's interesting the specialty that each one of these firms bring to the table. We feel that it's in our best interest to ensure that we have that expertise available for those specialty items. And with that, the recommendation is going to be for all 11 vendors that responded to the solicitation. Recommendation for award is to Design Plus LLC out of, all these firms are out of Albuquerque, by the way. G. Donald Dudley Architects LTD, Greer Stafford, SJCF Architecture Incorporated, John Anderson Architecture LLC, McLean and U Architecture and Design, SSA, which is Sam Sterling Architecture LLC, SMPC Architecture, Studio Southwest Architects, the Hartman plus Majewski Design Group, V Hill and Associates Architectural Group, PC, and Wilson and Company. As is typical, we're required to ensure compliance with the specification documents identified in the RFP, and all 11 firms met those requirements. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Okay, really quick, we have a question for Dr. Cleveland.
Thank you. I'd like to just ask a question of you and maybe Melanie. The last time we had a major expansion of Intel, we found it very difficult to start getting some of these specialties. Have you seen or felt that yet? Are we feeling the impact yet of the expansion, or are we still in pretty good shape in terms of being able to get the services we need when we need them?
I just want to, just before Melanie, if she doesn't mind, just give me a second. So this architecture design services is, there's a cap on it. Anything that's kind of major in nature, we would do a formal solicitation with that project in mind. So there's a cap for these. These are for renovations and smaller type on-call scenarios.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Good evening, Madam President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. To answer your question, are you asking if we're seeing any impacts with the expansion of Intel?
Right. In terms of getting some of the general contractor work or perhaps the paving work or some of those other things. The last time we were in a major expansion with Intel, we found it very hard to secure services in some of these areas. I just wondered if we're there yet.
We're not there yet. We definitely felt it with Amazon, but we haven't felt it yet with Intel.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. And yet, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve RFP 2022-021-FAC Architectural Design Services on Demand for the 11 submitters who have submitted for this contract.
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? Okay. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, next we'll consider the approval for award RFP number 2022-022-FAC Painting Contractor on Demand, and Michael Madrid once again.
Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. This is a brand new procurement to the district. We were piggybacking other entities. We were soliciting quotes. We were piggybacking various cooperatives. With discussion with the facility folks, we thought, well, let's administer our own price agreements. And that's what this RFP will establish. It'll establish 5 price agreements. The district received 5 responses, and the request is to issue a multiple award to ABS Painting, Consolidated Builders of New Mexico, Lucero's Painting LLC, V-Hills Contracting Services Incorporated, and Wiser Electric. Part of the rationale that we use to recommend all 5 is if you look at the list, I would only consider 2 of those as really paving contractors. The other 3 are actually contractors that can self-perform painting activities in-house, but they do other types of construction in addition to painting. But 2 of these folks this is what they do. This is all they do. They don't do any other type of construction activity. So we kind of feel it's in our best interest, since everybody can perform the activity of painting, to issue the multiple award. We did do evaluations of the proposals when they came in to ensure compliance with the qualification requirements identified in the proposals, and all 5 met those requirements. Like the other ones we just discussed, this is an opportunity for the district to ensure we have sufficient resources as we have a need either for remodels or possibly painting of new facilities. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Dr. Cleveland, do you have any comments?
No, I do not.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay.
This is Board Member Gary Tripp. I make a recommendation for approval of award RFP number 2022-022-FAC Painting Contractor on Demand.
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second.
Okay. We have a motion by Gary Tripp, and I wrote motion instead of Morgan, and we have a second by Jeffrey Morgan. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. And then our final, nope, we have 2 more. Okay. G, consider renewal of Balzano Government Relations Contract Amendment number 3, contract term extension. And once again, Michael Madrid is here to present.
Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. Before I get started with the presentation, I do want to acknowledge a couple typos in my memo. The RFP number is actually 2020, not 2022. So you'll see it on the background. It says 2022, and you see it on the first bullet as 2022. That RFP number was 2020. So I apologize for that error. As Dr. Cleveland mentioned in her earlier comments, this is our 3rd extension. This is the last extension that, if the board approves, that we can make with the Balzano Government Relations. Next year, we'll have to solicit a new RFP for government relations services. What I've prepared for you is kind of some bullets on the various activities that occurred as part of this procurement. Back on August the 13th, 2019, the board approved the evaluation committee's recommendation to award RFP 2020-0028 AM to Belzano Government Relations. The RFP identified an initial one-year term contract with extensions not to exceed 4 years. Let's see what else we have on here. The initial term of the contract was August 12th, 2019, going through 2011, 2020. Amendment number 1 carried that term from August 12th, 2020 to August 11th, 2021. Extension 2, or Amendment 2, excuse me, extended the agreement from August 12th, 2021 through August 11th, 2022. And this amendment takes it out one more year, and this is the final year. And Beth, I don't know if you
covered it.
Okay.
Is there anyone from Balsano here?
All right. Any questions from the board? Dr. Cleveland, do you want to add anything before?
Well, I guess just what I said about the other earlier, the last 2 years have been rather abnormal years. And so it's been somewhat difficult to do some of the traditional lobbying activities because the legislature was closed the year before and only partially opened last year. But appreciate Chris and the work that he did and very difficult circumstances.
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to approve Amendment number 3, extending the current contract with Belzano Government Relations and Rio Rancho Public Schools for the term of August 12th, 2022 through August 11th of 2023.
Board Member Gary Tripp, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Gary Tripp, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Sorry. Okay.
Thank you, board.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, for our last item, so this is to kind of discuss and then we can take action if needed. And it's really, with our Open Meetings Act, we just have to be really careful what we discuss. And so it's one of those things that we need to discuss in our open meeting. But currently we have Jeff Morgan serving as our large district representative to our New Mexico School Board of Directors. And so I know that Jeffrey Morgan he's got a lot on his plate with working and traveling and everything like that. And so I wanted to give him an opportunity. We could vote on this and wait on it until I think it's January is when this would typically come back up. He started a little bit earlier for us when we lost Win Coleman. But Jeff, I just wanted to see if you would like to open this up to the floor for someone else to be that director for our, to be that representative for our school board, or if this is something you want to continue on in.
Yes, I'd like to pass the baton on to someone else.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Jeff has been great, and you have a lot of traveling, and so sometimes it's hard to make all of those meetings. So with that, we're open for nominations for our large district representative.
I would like to nominate Gary Tripp. I think he already knows about half of the folks in the group, and I think it's a good opportunity for him to represent us.
Okay. And do we have I don't know if we even do we have a second for the nomination?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Okay. So I guess with that, all in favor of Gary Tripp being our large district representative to the Mexico School Board Directors?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that carries 5-0. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. If anyone wants to say anything, Gary, do you want to add anything? You excited? It'll be good.
We'll see.
So on that, there's an
Very
upcoming
diplomatic response. Very good response.
It'll be good. And with that, there's an upcoming leadership meeting. And even though a lot of times those leadership meetings entail, the school board president and such, but it does also, our large district representative does have a role in that meeting as well. So, so that will be kind of your next thing here in July.
Yep.
Coming up. So, okay. So we'll go to advanced planning. Yes, please. We will not report out until next week since we went into recess, and then we'll be coming back. Yeah, so we'll report on it at our next meeting. So for our advanced planning, June 20th will be an executive session at 4 p.m. and that will take place here in our board conference room. June 22nd will be an audit committee meeting at 3 p.m. in the training center, room 3. June 27th, a board work session at 4 p.m. June 27th also will be a regular board meeting. Is that correct? Will we be doing the work session across the hall and then coming into here? Okay, so the work session will be across the hall and then we'll come in for our regular board meeting at 5:30. July 11th will be a regular board meeting, 5:30. July 25th, there'll be an audit committee meeting at 4:30. And then July 25th, we'll have a regular board meeting at 5:30. Are there anything that we missed on the advanced planning or needs to be brought up that?
Madam President, I will be unavailable on June 27th. I am out of town.
Okay.
So I will not be able to attend either the board work session or the board meeting.
Okay, will you be able to come in virtually for those?
For the board meeting, I can possibly come in virtually. I will be on the East Coast, so I'm not sure about the timing, but I will make every effort to join virtually.
All right, so let's take note of that. Is that discussing the CTE, Dr. Cleveland?
Right.
Is that going to be discussing CTE on those days? That's going to be discussing CTE, just so you're aware.
This is the
That's
first
fine.
time seeing of it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and anything else, Kim?
Yeah, you have information about the leadership conference up there. And I would like to have some idea when you know who is planning to attend so we can put the appropriate paperwork in. And also make reservations. The hotels tend to fill up pretty quickly. We found out last year. It is in Taos, yes.
I can tell you right now, I won't be able to attend that. That's my only vacation with my family is during that time. So. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our meeting's adjourned for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.